We live in rapidly changing times where the world and its structures are being uniquely challenged. Tackling some of the world's most complex issues amidst the current crisis requires new ideas, innovation, and changing how we work through digital technology. Technology can be a positive force for transforming our world when it is developed and used in trusted, responsible, and inclusive ways. It offers the opportunity for positive impact, whether to advance sustainability, ensure delivery of critical services, or to promote social inclusion. The UN Innovation Room is a docuseries that aims to share global thinking on digital transformation and highlight how the United Nations is reimagining mission delivery with digital. My name is Tolu Olubunmi, and I will be your host. In our previous episodes, I've been guiding you through conversations with the World Health Organization, the World Food Programme, and the United Nations Development Programme. We've discussed the COVID-19 crisis and its severe global health and socioeconomic consequences, as well as the unique opportunities to redefine humanitarian and development support, the opportunities to strengthen and improve resiliency, and reignite the 2030 Agenda. Building on our previous conversations in the series, which addressed the major risks, challenges, and issues currently associated with the development agenda, today we'll focus our attention on what's next and key areas where we can foster a collective action and reimagine and rebuild. We'll discuss digital transformation and the 2030 Agenda, digital responsibility in the humanitarian and development sector, the digital divide, both economic and gender, and partnerships. Today, we will be speaking with Dr. Samira Azma, Assistant Director General for the Division of Data Analytics and Delivery for Impact at the World Health Organization. We'll also be speaking with Enrica Porcari, World Food Programme's Chief Information Officer and Director of Technology. Also with us is Rob Opp, Chief Digital Officer at the UN Development Programme, and Justin Spellhog, Vice President of Tech for Social Impact at Microsoft. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We have a lot to get to, so let's get started. Now, you've all spoken publicly about how the COVID-19 crisis is an opportunity to accelerate digital transformation and cooperation that is needed to deliver on the 2030 Agenda. With the annual SDG financing gap of over $2.5 trillion. How can digital technology help close that gap and get us back on track to achieving the SDGs? Enrica, do you mind starting us off?
Oh, with pleasure. Thank you, Carla. Well, last year, we rang the alarm that we were off track with the 2030 SDG goals. Then COVID hit, and the poor are getting poorer. People are losing their jobs, people are losing their livelihoods, remittances are slowing, and a quarter of a billion people are facing hunger. And they're not just in developing countries. Demand for food has doubled, but resources have not. So I will point to three things. I think we have an opportunity to improve. We need to get better at using technology and data to squeeze every last cent and every last second of value out of what we already do. Evolution won't cut it anymore. We really need to think differently. We can pool resources. This is why the Secretary General's roadmap on digital cooperation is really important. And just imagine the potentials if we were to pool all of our resources. If everyone get connected to mobile devices, to the internet, if we could empower government to make that happen and nurture the entrepreneurs that will create. But also we should stop wasting. Imagine if we stop throwing away valuable resources. If we think that like a third of all the food that we produce is wasted, then that's worth over $1 trillion a year. We could use data technology to improve production, to improve storage and distribution. If we could stop the e-waste, that's worth $60 billion a year. There is no silver bullet, but otherwise someone would have fired it already. But I think technology, connectivity, innovation on their own are not enough. So we need everyone to have access to them. We need to stop throwing away valuable resources, But more importantly, we need to combine that with new smart developing financing if we have any hope to get back on track for the 2030.
Rob, I'd love for you to chime in here as, the only digital transformation officer within the UN system. How is our work on this piece of it getting us back on track with the SDGs?
Yeah, this is a huge issue. And as Enrica said, there's a lot that we can do with technology here. But I think we first have to understand that the financing gap with the SDGs is actually as a result of the fact that it's not that the needs are not well aligned with the financing that's there. And part of that is because people don't understand enough about the opportunities of investment out there. There's a lack of data, a lack of standards around that. There's some problems with incentives and regulations as well. So we really need to look at this holistically and say, what's it going to take to attract the financing necessary to get there? What's the data that we need? What are the kinds of insights that we need to give investors so that they're willing to take that risk, they're able to quantify the risk, and they're able to jump into the markets? So we really think that this overcoming that information gap is a really important step. Another one, which Enrica alluded to, is really coming up with the new business models where we can use technology to really drive better inclusion of people on mobile devices, reducing the cost of services that are provided through mobile, really making the business work for people at their level of affordability.
Samira, when I look at that huge gap, the financing gap in the SDGs and achieving the SDGs, and then I think of everything that COVID brought our way, as the leading organization on this pandemic and on this global health crisis, how has that changed your calculus when it comes to being able to achieve the SDGs?
Thank you, Tolu. Absolutely right. The COVID has really derailed us from the track that we were on to achieve the SDGs. We are also losing the successes and the gains that we have made. When it comes to financing SDGs, we are not going to have the funds that we need ever. So we need to start thinking how we will work smarter. Definitely, we do need resources, we need money, but is it going to be enough always? I don't think so. So here, I think the key is for us to utilize the people, creativity, tools, and technology, and the innovation that is happening all around us. We are having this conversation without having to travel, without having to buy airline tickets and standing in long queues. So if we can garner the power of technology, people's ideas with partnerships and innovations, I think we could be on track to meet the SDGs, rebuild back better with the COVID crisis and the aftermath that we all are facing. I would like to give one example here. For data collection, we have all been hampered in terms of having reliable, timely, actionable data. It has become more apparent with COVID crisis. Imagine if we use mobile phones, it has been done before, where often traditional ways of collecting data was going house to house, doing a face-to-face interviews, which would cost approximately $1 million to $3 million for one country. And it will take a matter of maybe a year or 2 years. By the time we collect, process, and make the data available, it may not be timely nor actionable. And that is what we have been doing. Mobile phones gives us that opportunity. Zambia is one of the first countries that have used mobile phones to gather information from populations about their risks to health issues for a fraction of time, for a fraction of cost. So the time span from 3 years or 2 years have shrunk to a month or so, or even less. We can really make it real time. And imagine from about $3 million to coming to about $50,000 or even $100,000 or less. This is sustainability, and this is what we as multilateral organizations, private and public partnerships should be aspiring towards, giving the tools and technical support to the member states, to our countries, so that we have these sustainable solutions using innovations and technology.
Thank you, Samira. I really appreciate that you mentioned the role of the private sector in this. Justin, Microsoft is not a UN agency, but you are heavily invested in achieving the SDGs. As the world battles crises on many fronts, consumers are increasingly demanding that corporations engage more responsibly with people and the planet. How can private companies help the humanitarian sector generally, and also more specifically, how can companies help with a safe transition to digital?
Yeah, thank you, Tolu. Consumers should be demanding that. The SDGs and the challenges that we're facing with COVID-19 create a fundamental existential issue for us all. They don't respect borders. They don't respect whether you're private or public sector. They affect everybody. And if you need any proof of that, you can take a look at the COVID-19 pandemic and the fact that 70% of the world's SMEs have been shut down in the last 6 months. So if business ever needed a case, it's right there. Secondly, when you look at the opportunity for business and the opportunity to innovate, we know that by tackling the SDGs in the right way, it's going to unlock $12 trillion of market value and create 380 million jobs. So it is just clear that every business needs to step forward in this way in order to thrive, in order to survive today, but thrive tomorrow. Now, how does technology help solve some of those gaps? I really think kind of three ways. The first is really empowering organizations like the WHO, like the World Food Program, like UNDP to do more in their missions efficiently, scalably, and importantly with security. The example that the World Food Program has of maintaining continuity of operation when COVID hit by working remote, pulling all of their thousands of staff remote to keep their operations on the ground and serve the communities that needed the support the most is a great example of how technology can come to play. Second, really need to harness the power of data to increase the intelligence, responsiveness, and effective services for the sector. And that's the vision behind what the WHO is doing with their health data platform, is trying to build that system of intelligence that allows quicker, more accurate response in the markets that need the most support. And then finally, to hit on something that Robert said, we do need to look at how we use technology in powerful new ways to stimulate more SDG innovation. The rate of innovation right now in the technology sector, at least, is too slow. And the marketplace suffers an information gap between understanding what the available problems are, where the available funding sources are, and what potential solutions could look like. And that causes the market to chronically overestimate risk and underestimate opportunity in the way that they're thinking about building business models and building technology models. We have a number of different efforts. We're looking forward to partnering with the UNDP and others on the COVID-19 global facility that's going to look at how we use data to unlock opportunities, particularly for SME businesses, small and medium businesses around the world. And in the US, we're piloting a new technology called X for Impact that looks to solve this information gap and get more social entrepreneurs and more companies to the table building innovation for the SDGs.
Justin, I'm so glad that you brought up data. One of the biggest areas we need to make more progress in is the use of data. It's easier than ever before to connect with more channels and audiences, but for that connectedness to add real value in solving problems, the data has to be reliable, relevant, and above all, clearly linked to the problem it is aiming to solve. What opportunities and risks does this pose for UN agencies? What opportunities and risks are there for UN agencies in their access to and use of data? Rob, do you mind starting us off?
Sure. No, it's a huge issue, and data is so incredibly important for better decision making. We are in the business of trying to improve impact on people's lives, positive impact, and if we can't measure that, we have problems. And so the kind of the new forms of platforms and technologies that are generating so much data can really help us make better decisions. They can help us improve our accountability to our donors. They can also just make sure that we're shining light in places that it hasn't been shone before. On the other hand, because you asked about risks, we have to make sure that we are doing this in a responsible way, particularly if we're using people's personal data, personally identifiable data. And so there's many discussions that are being held about that now, how we can make sure that we're balancing this kind of the explosion of data sources with the appropriate and responsible usage of that data.
Enrique, we chatted a little bit about this, about the need for good data in the work that you're doing. Can you expand on that piece for us a little bit more, on what opportunities and risks that you're seeing and how you're using data?
Absolutely. So in the humanitarian sector, data is it's like the oil that makes our machine work. The data may be the oil of digital economy, but it really makes the as Rob was saying, the wheels turning for the humanitarian development sector, which needs to be informed by data as much as other sectors. But what makes the headlines is usually the misuse of data. Is privacy breaches or the like. But that doesn't mean that we can afford to ignore the damage that is caused by missing the use of data. There are lots of lost opportunities that we're seeing to build on big data. As Rob says, there are many opportunities to collect data, and we need to build on it to make better decisions. And I've seen many cases in our work. Extraordinary opportunities to reap the reward of data and technology without risking compromise of data protection. We've seen mobile network data predict the spread of viruses and inform emergency response. We've seen anonymized debit card transactions monitor recovery. We've seen how ourselves at the World Food Programme, by collecting information about the people that we serve, means that we can do a better job at serving them so that they can take back more control of their lives. But as Rob said, most of the most vulnerable people in the world that we serve, for them, their data is as valuable as their own lives. So we need to make sure that we respect their privacy and protect them from harm. This means navigating the technical and ethical issues that are specific to crisis-affected people. Their names, their locations, their fingertips, their iris scan. We need to make sure that we collect the data without doing any harm, making sure that we collect the data that we need and no more than that. We need to make sure that the people who own the data remain in control. So it's that balance between production and protection, between using data to make better informed decisions. We support the World Health Organization in moving thousands of metric cubes of cubic meters of assets by the click of buttons. We were, the e-commerce of the humanitarians, and we couldn't have done this if we didn't have ownership and understanding of the data that we manage. So, is data about the work that we do in our daily work, and the data that we own, that we hold in trust on behalf of the people that we serve. So it's striking the balance. We see huge opportunities, but we need to work together to maximize the value of the data without and minimizing the risk that entails.
Tolu, do you mind if I come in on this one?
Please go for it.
I completely support that and agree with the views here. a couple of other things that we're seeing certainly is the need to continue to progress in the sector towards standard models and common data standards like IATI, and common data models in the way that we solve problems. If our job is supporting beneficiaries, certain class of beneficiaries with services, and each organization defines a beneficiary in a different way and a service in a different way, it makes it hard to communicate, and it makes it impossible for our systems to talk. And responding to humanitarian challenges is a team sport of multiple organizations at an international, national, and local level. So establishing the common language and strong common systems and strong data interoperability is crucial. And one of the pieces that we're working on right now is making an investment in common data models for the social sector. And one of the things that we're building out in the next several months is a common humanitarian logistics model so that we start getting to those challenges. I also would emphasize the responsible data and AI practices. As we build more AI tools, as we amass more data, the bar exponentially goes up in how we need to be treating that data with fairness, with reliability and safety, with transparency, and I would say critically with inclusiveness, including really thinking through how we're including the most vulnerable in that data. Because if you're not counted, you don't exist in the data, and you may not be served. And so how do we use the judgment on the ground in environments where there may not be a lot of data, there's no truth like the field and what's happening on the ground, to inform that data in a smart way so that we really are reaching and supporting the most vulnerable effectively.
If you're not counted, you may not be included. I've heard Dr. Tedros say something similar over and over and over again about the importance of data when it comes to everything that the World Health Organization is doing. Samira, talk to us about that. There is a spotlight on WHO right now when it comes to your access to and use of data. What are the risks that you're facing? How are you making sure that the opportunities are taken advantage of?
Yes, Tolu. Dr. Tedros is completely committed to make sure the WHO becomes a modern, data-driven organization. And he often says we cannot make progress if we cannot measure progress. So that is a fundamental issue. And as a result of the transformation that WHO is going through, we have a pillar on data and innovation. This has been a priority now, and we are racing towards establishing a very solid data enterprise end-to-end from our country offices to the regions towards in the headquarters here in Geneva, so that we have a direct access with countries. We share information within the organization, and more importantly, we share data and intelligence and information with our partners. That is what we are building as the World Health Data Hub, with the support from Microsoft and other partners. And we hope that this enterprise will really reduce the fragmentation and make information at our fingertips so that we can take timely action. Data without action and action without data is really shooting in the dark. And that's coming to your first question, is that we already are under-resourced. So we really need to work smarter and maximize the resources that we have. And this can be through public-private partnerships, sharing information, of course, with right checks and balances. Patient, people, privacy is important. And WHO has data governance, data principles, data sharing policies to safeguard the privacy of the citizens, and that is important. At the same time, data is a public good. We ought to share information so that we can prevent epidemics, pandemics, we can forecast what the future looks like and prepare accordingly. So it is a balancing act, but it is an exciting time now We have 9.5 years towards SDGs. We cannot wait to fix the data problems and find solutions for another 10 years. We have to do it now. And what enables us is the technology, the innovations, and the partnerships.
Tolu, can I just add something for emphasis on that?
Please.
Just briefly to say that, I think the kind of traditional model that UN agencies have used has been more like sort of statistics offices. Yeah. You collect data, you hold data. I interpret that and then I give that in a report. But I think increasingly, the examples of WHO and others are showing that really the UN system is coming to grips with the fact that data must be shared. Data is a public good. We must make it available for people to use it and get impact from it. And so this is I think a new wave that's going through the UN system on this issue.
I think that's so important to I'm sorry, please go ahead.
No, to what I was saying, I mean, what Rob said just inspired me to, as reminding that there is a lot of these good models that also are already practiced very extensively in the private sector. This center, the customer at the center. Beneficiaries, the people that we serve, the furthest behind, the disenfranchised, are our clients, and we should treat them as such. We shouldn't ask them to get, an account with the WHO, one with UNDP, one with WFP, with the World Food Program, and so on and so forth, because we cannot ourselves get organized behind the scenes, sharing data, building common systems, agreeing on common ontologies, nomenclatures, to be talking to each other. We shouldn't be. So we should position ourselves as how do we, working together, serve the customers better. And these are practices that we can learn so much from our partnership with the private sector, from whom technology and data and information is important, but also some of their business models that are ready to be somehow translated into different markets.
I love seeing the shift when it comes to the UN systems in the use of data. It's so incredibly important now that we have access to reliable data and use it effectively, and of course share it as best as possible to be able to all do all our work. Now, all of your organizations have successfully ramped up the level of remote working and online collaboration. But with the digital economy fueling a lot of the recent economic growth, the pandemic has also exposed a widening digital divide. The importance of an inclusive economic recovery in response to the pandemic cannot be overstated. Justin, I'm going to go with you first for this. What do you think are the biggest risks that the digital divide poses when it comes to economic recovery and growth?
Leaving people behind, honestly. I mean, we've got a 21st century economy that, as we're seeing here with COVID, will be increasingly digital, increasingly remote, and we need to ensure that everybody in the world has the ability to participate in that economy, generate a livelihood that is meaningful, and to do that, we've got to help equip the world with the skills they need. And certainly, there's a role for traditional schools and universities, but we also have to look at non-traditional paths. And at Microsoft, one of the things that we've been focused on is a fairly ambitious initiative to equip 25 million people this year with the digital skills they need. And it brings really every part of our company together, from LinkedIn to GitHub to Microsoft, and we're backing that effort with $20 million in cash grants to nonprofit organizations to get people engaged and not only just focus on the skills, but also focus on how do we actually translate those skills to jobs that people can, put food on the table with. And it's important that we do this in developed markets. It's equally important that we do it in developing markets and in the hardest places to reach. And another area of focus for us has been working in camps at like Kakuma, which is a refugee camp, and ensuring that we've got the right labs and technology in place and learning programs in place so that really everybody does have a chance to participate in the economy. And I think that's a key responsibility, frankly, of the technology industry at this time.
Rob, UNDP has always worked to eradicate poverty. But as we're seeing more of this digital divide and we're looking at a slow, difficult recovery that needs to be inclusive, what are the steps that UNDP has been taking really to help protect us from leaving folks behind?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's important to say, just as Justin was pointing to, that the COVID-19 pandemic has really exposed a lot of, let's say, fault lines across the sort of social fabric of the world. One of those fault lines really is the digital divide. This is something that, before COVID hit, I think people recognized it as an issue. Some were saying it's an important issue. Certainly there's a commitment to bridging the digital divide. But COVID has put such a point of urgency on that. And it's because as governments have rushed to put measures in place to address the COVID pandemic, and companies have and individuals have, they have relied strongly on digital platforms. If you are not connected, then you cannot take advantage of those benefits. So this is a huge issue. We've been looking at the kind of impact of COVID-19. We see that we're likely this year to experience the first reversal in human development gains since the Human Development Index was created in 1990. So we see massive numbers of children out of school. When you look at that picture, for example, obviously it's the poorest households, those that are affected by disabilities, that really are on that kind of wrong side of the digital divide, and the situation is getting worse. So one of the things that we're seeing and we're doing as an organization is really encouraging this shift to look at the digital divide. And it's not just an infrastructure issue. It's about affordability. It's about getting the right tools and platforms for people who might be illiterate or people who are disabled. The inclusivity of this. We're encouraging governments to think of the digital the recovery from COVID-19 as partly a digital effort that needs to cover whole of society approaches. In other words, you need to think of your digital foundations, you need to think across sectors, and you need to think inclusively, because we cannot afford to leave people behind. So there's a number of initiatives that are going across the UN system. One of them being led by ITU and UNICEF is about connecting schools and connecting communities. We're looking at how to support governments with direct connections in remote areas in a number of countries, but also looking at how to make connectivity more accessible to the elderly, to women, to the marginalized populations around the world. So it is absolutely critical and absolutely urgent that we are looking at this issue right now.
Enrique, the World Food Program delivers much needed food to millions of people each year. There are travel restrictions now. Your staff are having to work more remotely than they've ever had to before. Yet we're struggling with a widening digital divide. How is this impacting the work that you're doing?
Massively, because we kind of have to think very, very fast. As a colleague before were saying, I mean, we keep on hearing that internet and technology is in the hands of 4 billion people. What about the 4 billion plus who don't have access? They usually, don't exist. They are invisible. They are the furthest behind. They are the ones. They are our customers. They're the one we have to try. We're trying to offer support to, and we see that. So from our perspective, reaching them in a fair and equitable way, in a safe way, without being able to go, creates a lot of challenges. The opportunities that what we're trying to do with the World Food Program is also extend, with support with the private sector partners, extend connectivity to areas that were not connected before. So, for example, with some private sector mobile network operators, we're working to extend network connectivity to the northern part of South Sudan, which is too too sparsely populated and too dangerous for a mobile network operator to make it worth its while. So what we do, we put our logistics facilities behind it, our security teams, to be able to reconstruct the infrastructure so that the service can be offered to the local populations. And then we hopefully restart a virtuous cycle of inclusion, both social inclusion, but also financial inclusion. And sometimes we feel that just by giving them access to the technology is almost like giving them a brush with which they can paint their own future. Just give them access, which is affordable, which is fair and equitable, and then they will build, you give them connectivity and they can create their own jobs, their own markets. You give them, as Rob was saying, through the Giga project, connectivity to a village, to a school, and you create a classroom and opportunities for rebuilding. As Justin and Microsoft is doing also, instead of having a brush, we'll have a tablet where they can paint there and change their life. We feel that by giving them opportunity to empower the people to serve themselves, to make the better choices. And we have a strong belief, together with our other humanitarian development partners, just give them an opportunity, and the small business with the access to a global market will be able to produce a better product, a better prospects for that are multiplier for the community and the country. So it's hard for us to travel, but what this has done is basically put our thinking hat on and thinking, how can we leverage our logistic capabilities, our connections on the ground, to be able to reinvent and rethink the way in which provide assistance.
Samira, WHO clearly has its hands full with the global health crises. Are you also thinking about inclusive economic recovery? And if so, how are you building that into your mission?
WHO's strategy is the triple billion targets. And this is a part of WHO's transformation that is inbuilt to have a results-oriented, a measurable impact of leaving no one behind. The triple billion targets focuses on universal health coverage, health emergencies, and healthier population. And all of these are interlinked and interconnected. And data provides that interlinkage and support. But innovation becomes a critical aspect so that the information is shared, and each of the topics that support the triple billion has a return of investment in there. If you have a better access to essential medicines, people are getting right medicines at the right time, or right care at the right time. Or there are healthier policies for clean air, or for healthier food options. So you see another return of investment of lives saved and healthier lives for the population and for the cleaner planet. So these are the ways one can quantify the invaluable return of investment.
Fantastic. One topic that came up in some of our one-on-one conversations is the importance of partnerships. In fact, all of your organizations are already working together. What would you say are some critical elements for successful partnerships? Rob, you mind starting us off?
Sure. We absolutely need partnerships, especially in the digital realm, where we don't have the pretension to become technology companies. The expertise for that is elsewhere. So I think it starts with a kind of shared vision around what we're trying to accomplish. And so you need to have that kind of focal point of the SDGs or some other kind of shared vision. Then you have to have that kind of mapping of comparative advantages. If we bring ourselves, each other together, then what are the kinds of skill sets, expertise, and so on that each of us has that we can bring together? And then over time, it's a developing of trust. We've seen an explosion of partnerships in the digital realm as a response of COVID. For example, in Uganda, where we're partnering with an e-commerce company, Jumia, to put farmers online to be able to sell their produce where they wouldn't have been able to access the markets before that were shut down. We see similar examples in Namibia, in Latin America as well. So it's really that kind of understanding of what you can come together with. And then we also benefit from global partnerships where we have companies like Microsoft who are able to give that deep expertise on enterprise data management, and we're really working to mutual benefit for that with that shared vision around achieving the SDGs.
Enrique, if I could come back to you on partnerships. The World Food Program does partnerships beautifully. What are a few of those that you've been able to work so effectively on that are proving just necessary in this moment?
So we have WFP does a lot of partnerships in everything that we do. Within my work in the technology division, we also are very proud to have welcomed and be able to walk hand in hand with a number of partners. Some for many years. I think we've been working with Ericsson Response for 20 years now, responding to thousands of missions together. Hand in hand, co-developing solutions, looking at and opportunities together for that shared value that Rob was alluding to. Some of the others are younger relationships, but like all good relationships, partnerships take work. And so I think we've been lucky to have been able to strike good partnerships because we base our relationship on trust and openness. We want to make sure that we understand what's in it for each other. We do not, our work, humanitarian sector, is not a dumping ground for technologies. It's a place where we could together understand who can bring what. It's a place that is, as Justin was saying earlier, could unlock many opportunities for new markets, but at the same time, where the need are real and really dire. So I think it's again not a recipe, but a few of the ingredients is trust. Making sure that you build your relationship on trust, that you're committed to be in it for the long haul. That you have this shared understanding of what everybody brings and what's in it for them. And making sure that it's not only based on philanthropy, but it's based on really that shared value. What for some of our partners, for example, is built on the fact that they really take huge pride in working in the humanitarian sector, and that becomes an element of for attracting new talents in their pools. So as long as we are clear, we're honest, and we're committed in the longer term, we find that we've been successful, and we've been able to deliver beautiful services, amazing innovations, great scalable technologies, and being able to respond to the most complex emergencies because of our partners. As Rob said, we are not technology companies. We're not technologists. We are humanitarians. And we need to tap on that expertise that money can buy, what's not for sale, that commitment in the long term, and that ingenuity that the private sector has plenty of.
Hey, Tolu, can I come in on this one? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk to you about partnerships generally, but I also want to talk more specifically about how Microsoft changed its approach to partnerships with the creation of Tech for Social Impact. Now, I'd love for you to explain the rationale behind this model and what you've been able to achieve.
Yeah, let me do that. I do want to reflect on what Enrique said, because I think she has it exactly right, and same with Rob. One word that I personally bristle at is the word vendor. I don't wake up in the morning to go be a vendor. I wake up in the morning to be a strategic partner to drive fundamental transformation impact in all of these organizations here and beyond. And as Enrique highlighted, we do take great pride in that. And that means establishing a partnership where everybody understands the respective expertise that are coming to the table. We have an investment model together that is sustainable. There is clear and mutually agreed upon definition of success, and there's fundamentally, at the end of the day, like all good relationships, there's just inherent trust in the role that we all can play, and that is just so critical. That's why we've been able to do what we've been able to do together with the WHO, with the World Food Program, with UNDP, with UNICEF. So it's just such an important point of transition in the way that we work. Now, to your question on tech for social impact, we created this organization specifically to empower every nonprofit and humanitarian organization with the technology they need. And we take that mission very, very seriously. We brought together the best of our philanthropies team, the best of our commercial teams, the best of our technology and engineering teams. And in the last 3 years, we've been able to bring 200,000 nonprofits and humanitarian organizations onto the cloud. That means powering 200,000 missions through the technology that we're partnering on. We donated last year through our model about $1 billion in cloud technology just in about a 12-month period. And we're investing deeply to unlock new capabilities, whether it's our AI for humanitarian investments that we're making, the investments we're making in common data models for nonprofits and humanitarian organizations. And I think the evidence of the impact is in the stories that are being told in this series and the stories that have been told today, not by us, but by the organizations here in this discussion. But, to be very honest with you, and I spent some time really going through the Goalkeepers report put out by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And as was mentioned earlier, across almost every SDG measure and index, we are reversing course. And not by a small margin, and in a very, very, very short period of time. It's honestly very humbling. When you sit back and your job is to empower the organizations on the front line and you see all of the metrics sliding in the wrong direction, it is really humbling. And our work is only beginning. And I personally feel a sense of anxiety and energy to lean in even heavier than we are today to really help stimulate the innovation that's needed that we can bring to the table as a company, but also helping others, social entrepreneurs and other companies, build the innovation that is so needed to tackle the SDGs, to tackle COVID-19, and to reverse the course that we're currently seeing so that we can close that gap and really make the progress that we all want to see by 2030.
Thank you
Tolu,
so
if
much
I
for
can
that.
say, I think that you, Justin, you've led the way with your partnership model, really modeling leadership for a lot of other companies. And I think I really hope that this becomes, examples of how joining forces between the private sector and the public sector and going and trying to address really untractable problems that affect so many people is going to be a motivation for more to join this. And if we're going back to the beginning of this episode and looking at how do we get back on track, I think by showing even more commitment and resolve in this new partnership models across the UN, across the international organization, but even more importantly, with the joining hands with the private sector.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Last year, the Secretary General called for the decade of action, right, where he recognized the fact that we are not moving at the scale or the speed that we need to achieve the SDGs, and we need to do more. I love that, our conversation has really honed in on the importance of trusted partners as we do our work as individuals, as organizations. Well, thank you all so much for being with us. Thank you to all of our guests for being part of the UN Innovation Room series. These conversations and insights you've shared are critical to effectively respond to the world's challenges, help deliver your mission, and ultimately improve lives. Thank you all so much today for being a part of this.
Thank you.
Wonderful
Thank you.
talking to everyone. Thank you again.
You all did fantastic. Honestly, I could have spent so much more time talking to you, particularly about data. I really enjoyed our conversation about data and also around partnerships and building trusted partnerships. Samira, I know that you didn't, get in there on the partnership piece. If there's anything you'd love to add, I'd like to throw it to you if there's anything you want to add on building trusted partnerships.
Sure. I think I will make a few points. The response from many partners during the COVID crisis, offering help to WHO has been unprecedented, and it has been very humbling. And Dr. Tedros says, let us embrace partnerships. Collaborations are critical and extremely important, not only within the UN systems, but outside the UN systems with non-governmental organizations, academic research institutions, the private sector. The private sector leaps forward in terms of innovation and technology, and they have made available their time, their intelligence, their resources and expertise to WHO. And as a result, we were able to respond to the COVID pandemic in a more authoritative way, such as countering infodemics, for example, and gathering all the information that is needed so that we can rapidly provide timely, reliable information to our countries and to the public. So I think we hope that this partnership continues, and we are very much thrilled and excited to partner with Microsoft on building this World Health Data Hub. We are hoping that very soon WHO will be able to provide trusted data to everyone, everywhere, anytime. I think that is what is needed.
Thank you so much for that. Well, you all made my job extremely easy. I'm very grateful for you being here and taking the time. I think this is such an important conversation that we're having, and just grateful that in this extremely busy time with the UN General Assembly and everything else that's happening, I'm grateful that you took the time to have this conversation with us and share your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Nika.
Thank you to all our guests for being part of the UN Innovation Room series. The conversations and insights you've shared are critical to effectively respond to the world's challenges, help deliver your mission, and ultimately improve lives. The COVID-19 pandemic and the other challenges we have faced this year have brought new meaning to and focus on digital and the impact it can have on the UN's work. As the UN agencies continue to deliver on their mission, with many of them at the front lines of this global health crisis, no one has been spared from the impact of the pandemic. We applaud your leadership, agility in response to this pandemic. Your commitment to promoting an inclusive recovery for the long term is incredibly impressive. We are grateful for all of your work. We can only achieve the Sustainable Development Goals if we work together to make the world a more equitable, prosperous, and peaceful place. Now, to all of you at home, thank you. Thank you for joining us. We hope that you have enjoyed this conversation and encourage you to look for other programming in our United Nations series.